Welcome back. You're still watching Guardians of Gaia, connecting people and planet. Now let's hear how agroecology can mitigate the impacts of climate change.
There are several farms, over 300 acres, and the management practices of the different farms vary. But for this farm, we've decided to go to agroecological farming.
We definitely are pursuing being organic. It's better for the environment, it's better for your body.
So what you would see here is meeting the challenges of climate change through organic practices. Re-engineering the farm using the permaculture design and agroecological farming with organic farming. So we're mixing it all up. We try to control runoff and soil water. So what we have done is to include swales, mini swales. It's really a level drain along the contour that holds water for a particular period of time. It really captures the water and feeds the substrate. In the dry season or when it becomes very hot, below you have water. So the plants can stand up much longer to drought than if we didn't have these swales. We have windbreaks right around, and within the windbreaks we have crops.
We do intercropping.
And plant stacking. Stacking is a form of intercropping. Plant stacking really means that you have different levels of plant until you reach the ground. When the rain falls, the rain can hardly get directly to the soil. Protected agriculture, we try to protect the soil and have as many crops as possible. We are experimenting on mini protective structure. So what we have done is to build some umbrellas, I call them. We cover the soil with it about 3 feet from the ground. The rain falls on the plastic, does not go to the crop, falls into the drains on both sides, right? That we use as mini swale, and we have crops growing, right? Protected from the rain on those mini protective structures.
We do mulching.
Come in with a weed eater and we will cut the weeds, and the weeds will form a mulch. Again, that will cover the ground. So the ground or the soil here is always covered.
The mulching is very important because then it keeps the weeds down. Weeds are, there's endless amount of weeds. So the mulching not only helps the soil, but it also helps with keeping the weeds down, controlling the weeds. And we've actually started using cardboard too. I try to collect the cardboard from some of our stores that sell some of our products. We put down the cardboard and then put the grass on top of that, and that really does help controlling the weeds. As a member of GOM, the organic movement, that's the hope, is to try to get as many farmers to be organic as possible.
To think organic and to bring the system organic.
When they see the results and that it will be cost effective going that way, I think it's a no-brainer that's what we should be doing. And in the long term, it will be cheaper because we'll be self-sufficient, and that's part of one of our goals, is to be self-sufficient where we wouldn't have to be buying anything.
First and most important lesson is that organic farming can work. And organic farming, unlike what most people believe, that production would fall and you would not be able to make a profit, I am not seeing that.
We talk about how young people need the opportunities brought by a sustainable agricultural system. Building that future means addressing climate change urgently. Let's join Caleb Kay and Lisa Kanya Matiso, youth climate justice activists, sharing their experiences of facing the climate change crisis.
The biggest things about environmental justice is actually living in environment and living around an environment where you can see the green, where you can see plants, where you can see high-rise trees. The unfortunate thing is that in our townships, in our impoverished communities, you don't often see the type of nature that you would see in urban areas where people are actually able to appreciate these small things in life. And so when you don't see these things around in your communities, obviously you're not going to have the same type of empathy for someone who might be seeing this on a daily basis and who might want to protect a rainforest and things of the like. You are faced with not that higher standard of living as opposed to somewhere else in this country. We are faced with gangsterism. We are faced with every day seeing people not having enough to even come by, living from hand to mouth. It's very difficult then to focus on something like climate change. For at least 10 years of my life, we lived with our grandma in a house where there were 17 people with 3 bedrooms only. The thing that just kind of got me through was wanting to get out of that, because I knew I'm either going to get out of this if I go live on the streets or if I actually work hard. And I think obviously the latter was the better decision for me. My biggest motivation is to get my family out of the township. And my second biggest motivation is to ensure that the generation that comes after me don't have to experience what I did as a kid. So I'm the first one from my family to go to university. I never thought that I would actually go as far as being in university. My goal was to finish matric because that was the standard that was set. The first time I fully understood income inequality, first time I really fully understood race relations in South Africa was when I went to university. Even when it comes to things like environmental injustices, I just thought that illegal dumping such was a thing, and I just thought people did it because they had no other option. I never knew that you could actually contact your counselor to come and help and all of those things. So when I got all of the education that I needed to fully integrate into understanding policy in South Africa, I became more aware of how I needed to adjust myself into the activism space. So the process for today was basically to try and get more people, specifically from the Western Cape side, who were going to join the drafting of the document that we're going to hand over to the city of Cape Town. But I think it's still important to try and get people to be involved. And I think education in that context, to kind of conscientize people about their surroundings and make them aware of who they are, where they come from, and certain things that are happening in our country is very important in molding future and upcoming activism from very early age, and it needs to start from that grounding level.
Okay, so I'm Lisa Kanya Matiso. I'm actually 17, turning 18. Every individual has a way of thinking. We are all very unique and we all have very unique skills. And if you combine those unique skills together, we could actually make something that's tangible, something that's solid, something that can benefit the whole of us.
People are afraid, and I was afraid to speak up because I had thought that my opinions weren't valid. I had thought that my opinions were wrong. The more people realized what I was saying, and the more my opinions were being recognized. And after that, I kind of got the feeling that, wait, if I speak, I could actually affect change. If people see it in this view and in this light, I think there will be a lot more young people who's going to affect change in the near future.
I could say that the youth is very angry, like very, very angry, because they are in demand for change.
One of the things that needs to happen is that there needs to be a collaboration between those who have been living on this world for a long time, who are in power, and young people. And I say this because elderly people have more knowledge on where they've come from. Young people have more knowledge on what they've been going through and where they want to go through. So it's very important to ensure that you have young people put in these places of decision making so that they can ensure that there are more people actually taking control of their future. But more than that, young people are often the ones who are facing the things on the ground, and so they have a more practical approach to addressing things like climate change. Scientists, decision makers, yes, perfect. We need everybody's help in this, but we also need to ensure that we put the human perspective into addressing climate change. And that is what a lot of young people can actually offer to the table.
Like we learned how to deliver his speech is right. I'm very positive that we're going to get our voices heard and we're going to get the change that we are longing.
We need leaders going to be affirmative in viewing climate change, number one, as real, but also more than that, in viewing that climate change in itself is something that affects people who are impoverished even more than those who are living in suburban areas, and fully understanding these inequalities and how climate change affects these inequalities. We are living in a world that's ever changing. A lot more people are becoming open-minded, and just moving forward from where we've been as a society to where we're going to now, I think I'm definitely optimistic that we are going to have a leader, not just in a country like South Africa, but in every other country where people are going to be more open-minded in how they address things. And that's something that personally I'm really excited for.
From the Not on Our Soil series by African Climate Reality Project, that was Caleb Kay and Lisekanya Matiso. Next up, we have a look at the third and last episode of the series on genetically modified organisms in South Africa, Debunking the Myths. Let's have a look.
In the late 1990s, South Africa's democratically elected government embraced genetically modified GM seeds as part of our agriculture system. They accepted the myths that were sold to them by the biotechnology industry. Here are some of the key myths that were and are still used to punt GMOs and the stark reality that experience has revealed. We have all heard the argument that in order to feed the world, more food needs to be produced on less land. In order to do this, the biotech industry claims we must focus on advanced and intensive agricultural techniques and technologies that produce high-yielding crops, such as GM seed, and rely on agrochemicals. Despite the fact that our staple food, maize, has been produced from genetically modified seed on an industrial scale for 20 years, the nation is racked by a double burden where there is both severe undernutrition and overweight and obesity. South Africa has the third worst score for low birth weight in the southern African region. 40% of the population has low levels of dietary diversity, one of the causes of low weight and stunted growth. Obesity is becoming an epidemic in South Africa. The pie chart below shows the extreme levels of hunger experienced daily by South African households. Embracing GMOs for over 20 years has evidently not resulted in food security. The international community has agreed that GMOs are not the same as their conventional counterparts and must therefore be assessed on a case-by-case basis for market approval. This is a long, expensive and onerous process for GM products and is the basis for the claim that GMOs are extensively tested. It is, however, false. Our government relies on corporate science for decision-making. A body called the Executive Council to the GMO Act of 1999 is responsible for assessing applications for new GMOs that will end up on our plates. Our government parrots the biotech industry's position on the safety of GMOs, asserting that scientific evidence to date has shown that GMOs do not pose any new health risks. There is no independent food or environmental safety testing carried out. Accessing the necessary information that is needed for meaningful public participation is withheld by the companies as confidential information. A growing body of independent science, however, is consistently raising evidence-based concerns about the potential long-term impacts of consuming GM foods. Despite consistently making our regulators aware of this independent science, our regulators have chosen to believe in the myth of GM food safety. Agrochemicals are not assessed in the new GMO applications. Despite the promise that GMOs would reduce the need for agrochemicals, the opposite has proven true. However, the Executive Council does not consider the impacts of these toxic chemicals on our health or environment in the safety assessment and approval of GMOs. Again, the safety of these chemicals is left up to the chemical industry to self-regulate, while our authorities simply rubber-stamp their dubious scientific evidence of safety. In South Africa, glyphosate remains largely unregulated and unmonitored, posing risks to farm workers, to the soil, to the environment in general, including water sources, and to people who eat GM maize and soya. A court in the US awarded $289 million to Mr. Lee Johnson in a case against Monsanto, as the court said that Monsanto's Roundup was a substantial contributing cause to the non-Hodgkin lymphoma of Mr. Johnson, based on scientific evidence presented. It also found that Monsanto was guilty of malice and oppression in muddying the scientific waters via underhand dealings. In 2015, our government approved Monsanto's drought-tolerant GM maize, known as MON 87460. They claim that it will especially benefit smallholder farmers who need new solutions as climate change and drought deepen. Independent scientists agree that Monsanto's GM drought tolerance is bogus. Monsanto inserts a useless gene into non-GM drought-tolerant maize varieties and falsely claims that it confers drought tolerance. It is widely accepted that hunger is not caused by a lack of production, but is instead a complex systemic problem that includes high levels of poverty and unemployment, deep inequity, and the structure of South Africa's food system, which must be environmentally sound, socially just, and produce nutritious food accessible to all.
Thank you for being with us as we tackled the topic of food and farming for the future, looking at agroecology as an alternative and sustainable system of agriculture. The world desperately needs a food system that addresses food insecurity, food waste, and environmental degradation. We need a system change now. So join us again next week on Guardians of Gaia, connecting people and planet as we explore the environmental world and learn how people are saving the planet and fighting the system that is killing it. Goodbye.
Don't leave the tap dripping. Don't leave the tap dripping. Don't leave the tap dripping. Dripping, dripping.